On a dark and stormy night, 7 maidens gather at Hyrule Castle. Among them, the Princess Zelda. Outside the castle, the princess meets an 8th person, the hero known as Link. Zelda used telepathic power to summon Link to the castle. He arrived carrying a shield and nothing else. The ominous clouds in the sky had appeared suddenly. It made the people uneasy. For the princess, it has made her concerned about the seal that holds Vati. In a previous age, the wind sorcerer Vati had terrorized the land of Hyrule. He was first sealed away by a mysterious boy armed with only a sword. That sword was said to shatter the holder into pieces, each piece an exact copy of the holder of the blade. The Wind Mage was sealed in the sword, which in turn was stowed away inside a shrine. Years later, the mage escaped and captured the Princess Zelda of a previous age. A hero took up the blade known as the Four Sword, shattered, and using the combined force of his duplicates defeated the Wind Mage and sealed him away. The shrine which holds the Four Sword, and therefore holds Vati captive, is hidden near Hyrule Castle. These 6 maidens hold the power to open the way to it. Zelda and the maidens use their mystical powers to open a portal to the shrine. But as they do, a dark shadowy mist begins to spill out of it, and a 9th person emerges. That is, if we can truly call this apparition a person. It is a dark, shadowy figure, which appears to bear the same form as Link. With a chuckle, this shadow casts a spell, which binds the princess and the maidens within a strange, magical shadow-encrusted crystal, before pulling them into the Shrine of the Four Sword. The shadow follows, as does the hero. The Shrine of the Four Sword is an ancient place that is little used. Moss and vines cover the space. On the northern end of the shrine is a stone pedestal which sits near the center. It's watched over by a stone relief carving of an eye. A sword is driven into the pedestal, recalling Arthurian myth. To the south of the pedestal there are 4 pillars. In a previous age they were topped with symbols representing the 4 elements: earth, wind, water, and fire. Those symbols are now missing. Only the pillars remain. Link finds the shrine covered with unnatural shadow. The maidens are nowhere to be seen. His shadowy doppelganger stands beside the pedestal. Link, equipped only with a shield, finds he cannot touch the shadowy figure. At least, not without his sword. There is, of course, a sword in the pedestal. But should Link pull it out, the Wind Mage Vati will be freed. Link decides the immediate need to rescue the princess and the maidens is too great. He pulls the sword from the pedestal, knowing full well what that means. Link's body shatters, splitting into 4, each piece a perfect copy of the other, different only in the color of tunic that they wear. The shadowy doppelganger begins to flee. Link moves to give chase, but a whirlwind swirls out of the pedestal. It sucks up Link and flings him far from the shrine. The Wind Mage Vati appears in the center of the whirlwind before disappearing in a puff of black smoke. A mysterious voice informs Link that Vati has robbed the Four Sword of its power. In order to rescue the Princess Zelda and the maidens from the dark forces which now hold them bound, Link must restore power to the blade by collecting Force Gems. Thus, the journey begins. This is Legendary Adventures, a Legend of Zelda playthrough podcast. This week we're venturing through the first 3 stages of Four Swords Adventures on Gamecube. Four Swords Adventures establishes itself as a unique Zelda experience right from the start. It's building off ideas presented in its predecessor, Four Swords, in a unique way. There are 2 games contained on the disc, Hyrulean Adventure and Shadow Battle. As with Four Swords, this is a stage-based game, rather than an open-world title. Unlike Four Swords, players tackle the stages in Hyrulean Adventure in a set order, and the stages are not in any way randomized. Another change in this game: players do not get to name their Link. The original Four Swords also did not give players an option to name their Link, but that game was also written in a way that Link's name was never said by any of the characters. Here, players do not name Link, and the characters call him by the name Link. It's a first for the series, and it will not be the last time that the series takes this route. Unlike the original Game Boy Advance release of Four Swords, Four Swords Adventures has an option to play in single player. This is what I did. The stages themselves do not change between single player and multiplayer play, with one exception. In the multiplayer mode, each level features the appearance of the Tingle Tower, a minigame repository. It does not appear in the single player game. I did recruit my wife Mandy to help me check out the multiplayer-only minigames included in the main quest, so you will hear from her as we explore those. Otherwise, I will be describing my solo playthrough. The first level is called the Whereabouts of the Wind. The first stage is Lake Hylia. We select this stage and the game begins. The four Links lay on the ground, unconscious after being thrown by Vati's whirlwind. They are awakened by an owl calling them by name. The owl should look familiar to fans of the series. It is Kaepora Gaebora, the owl featured in Ocarina of Time. The landscape too should also appear familiar. The grass, flowers, and trees are all clearly modeled off the design of the world featured in A Link to the Past, while Link, the princess, the maidens, Vati, and the environments from the introduction all clearly reflect the Wind Waker-inspired design of the original Four Swords. It's a true melting pot of a game, with various elements from previous Zelda games all being intermingled. Speaking to Game Informer in 2004, producer Eiji Aonuma commented on why there is a broad mixing of Zelda games in Hyrulean Adventure. He said, "Actually, the individual director of this game, Toshiaki Suzuki, is a big fan of the Zelda series. So one thing that he did with this game that I really want to praise him for and the work that he's done on it, was he went back and he looked at a lot of past Zelda games, and he took elements from almost each game. So, if you're playing through and the only Zelda game you played was The Wind Waker, you'll look at that and you'll say, this is very familiar to The Wind Waker. Or for people who know Ocarina very well, you might be able to pick up hints from Ocarina." Kaepora Gaebora reveals that he is the source of the mysterious voice which spoke to Link after Vati was freed. He explains that the path to freeing the captured maidens will also lead to Vati. He acknowledges that the Shadow Link is up to no good, and says that Link can restore power to the Four Sword by collecting Force Gems. The owl then departs, and we truly begin our adventure. The music for this first stage resembles the Hyrule Field theme from Ocarina of Time. It's not the same melody, but the tone and the movement seems to bring that theme to mind. It's underpinned by a rhythm that resembles the rhythm of the Dark World theme. Its melody features soaring trumpets in the A section, followed by softer woodwinds in the B section. Lake Hylia, as expected, is a tutorial stage. It gradually unfolds, ensuring players are eased into the experience. The first screen requires players to slash through bushes in order to advance. On the second screen, players discover a house. 4 girls can be seen in the backyard. They move between 4 different formations. When players walk inside the house, a sub-screen opens on the single-player game, showing the inside of the house. In a multiplayer game, the house interior appears on the Game Boy Advance screen. The old man inside the house offers to teach Link formations. Unlike the original Four Swords, in Four Swords Adventures, there are always 4 Links in the game. The number of formations available to a player depends on how many Links are in the game. In a single-player game, there are 4 formations. The first is the box. Players arrange themselves in the shape of a square, 2 in front, 2 in back. The second is wide. All the Links stand in a horizontal line. The third is long. The Links stand in a vertical line. And the final is cross. The Links stand with 2 vertical and 2 horizontal. It's intended to be a cross, but it resembles a diamond to me. A diamond even appears on the ground when the Links enter this formation. Players put their formations to use on the very next screen to push a large rock into a river, and in a cave on the other side of the river. They use a box formation to push a large floor switch. These were both common mechanics of the original Four Swords, requiring players to use teamwork to progress. There's a boomerang inside the cave. As players enter the cave, they'll notice the music switches to a new rendition of the cave theme from A Link to the Past, known as Dank Dungeons. It should be noted that the majority of the music in this game comes from A Link to the Past. There are very few tunes that are original music. The items in Four Swords Adventures work the same way they did in the original Four Swords. Link can only hold one item at a time. Players are required to leave their current item behind in order to swap to a different item. The items should be familiar to longtime players, as they all return from previous games, including the boomerang, bow, bomb, slingshot, fire rod, rock's feather, and Pegasus boots. Players need to collect the boomerang in order to progress. If they proceed forward without visiting this cave, they'll be required to turn around and enter the cave anyway. That's because on the following screen there's a house with a locked door. The path forward is hidden under a rock surrounded by tree trunks, and the item to remove those tree trunks is located within the house subscreen. Shadow Link also appears on the screen, but he will flee after a bit. If players are able to land a hit on him, he'll leave behind a large force gem. The key to the house is out in the open behind some rocks. Players can use the boomerang to grab it. Interestingly, players need to pick up and carry keys in this game. That means they won't be able to fight or use items for as long as they are holding a key. It's an idea that will be carried forward into games like the Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. Inside the house, the woman says that she's been trying to get out and did not realize her house was locked from the outside. She realizes the person who locked the door must have been Shadow Link. Players will likely notice a new musical theme for being inside a house. It's primarily built around fanciful strings. The first part gives a fairly busy vibe, like someone bustling around a kitchen before a swirling ascent with bells carries us into a lighter, airier portion that gives some sense of relief and comfort. Behind the house, players find a fire rod. The lady inside the house says that Shadow Link was also after this fire rod, but she lets us have it. The fire rod, of course, is used to burn things. It will burn grass, bushes, and tree stumps. The fire it creates spreads through any burnable object that the flames touch. This concept for creating fires which spread through the environment originated with A Link to the Past. In a 1992 interview, Zelda co-creator Shigeru Miyamoto suggested they cut this idea from the game due to memory space limitations. Beneath the rock, we're introduced to a side-scrolling segment. Fans of the series will likely know that side-scrolling segments have been a part of the series from the very first game, though they really are more associated with Zelda 2 and Link's Awakening. Between the two, these side-scrolling segments featured here in Hyrulean Adventure are more like those seen in Link's Awakening. In this very first one, players will likely even notice fish enemies from Mario known as Cheep Cheeps are found inside the cave. Mario enemies appearing in Zelda games can be traced back to A Link to the Past, with the chain chomps featuring in Turtle Rock. But it is likewise most associated with Link's Awakening. Not long after this side-scrolling area, players will be introduced to the swimming in this game, when they are forced to jump into the river. We get a little tease as there is a bridge with soldiers on it, but they can't reach us, nor can we reach them at this point. In this game, Link can dive under the water much as he can in Link's Awakening, but he has a time limit on how long he can stay underwater. If players stay under too long, Link will automatically resurface and spend a couple seconds gasping for air. We go under a bridge in a callback to A Link to the Past, and then lift a rock to find Tingle, making his fourth appearance in a mainline Zelda title. Tingle, of course, first appeared in Majora's Mask. Prior to this game, he has been most associated with maps, but that changes here. In Four Swords Adventures, Tingle will occasionally fly on screen and attempt to steal forest gems. In my experience, he seems to target only large gems. A second side-scrolling segment introduces cannons that the players use to launch themselves up to higher areas. This is the first time in the series that Link has been blasted out of a cannon, and it won't be the last. We use the cannons to scale a waterfall, which I must say looks quite amazing. The graphics in this game are really quite nice. At the top of the waterfall there are 3 caves behind a second waterfall. In the cave to the far right, a man teaches players how to separate their links and control colors other than green Link. Just press the X button. We use this trick to press 4 floor switches. That opens the path forward, wrapping us back down the waterfall and through a side-scrolling area to reach the bridge from earlier. We take on dozens of soldiers at once. It's not a difficult fight, but it's a nice way that the game shows off that it can have a whole lot of enemies on screen at once, more than we've seen in any previous Zelda title. It was shortly after defeating these knights that I acquired 2,000 Force Gems. That's the magic number needed to power up the Force Sword. When Link's sword is fully powered, it will fire sword beams when Link is at full health. That's a feature that's been in most 2D Zelda games from the very first, and the beams in this game have the appearance of a sword, calling back to the very first game. Link can also perform a hurricane spin, which likely has its origins in the Wind Waker, but it technically first appeared in the original Four Swords. After crossing the bridge, we get into a boss fight, or perhaps an enemy gauntlet might be a more accurate description. We fight against a chief soldier. It is a large knight that is generally accompanied by smaller knights that it commands as it attacks. The chief soldier also appears to have a bird-like head with a beak. It reminds me of the Foka from Zelda 2. Once the soldier falls, we reach the end screen of the stage. Four eyes resembling Vati form a barrier at the exit. Kepora Gebora explains that the eyes create a barrier of darkness, which Vati is using to siphon energy from the land. The owl notes that the grass has died, and only dirt remains around the eyes. With a fully powered sword, we can hit the eyes, and destroy the barrier to end the stage. Every stage will end with a similar barrier. The second stage of the Whereabout of the Wind is known as the Cave of No Return. The stage begins immediately where the previous stage left off. A massive door slides open, and we venture inside a dark cave. In fact, I would say this feels like the darkest cave I have seen in the Zelda series to this point. When we first enter, nothing can be seen but a couple of lanterns. Once we grab a lantern, a circle of light expands outward. The lantern behaves much like it did in A Link to the Past. It not only provides light, but it can be used to light torches. It also goes a step beyond A Link to the Past, as the lantern can be used to burn up flammable objects. Early on in this dungeon, push-block puzzles are introduced. The first one is used to get an optional chest. A second one provides access to a chest with a key. It's surrounded by a circle of fire. The flames dissipate when the 4 blocks are pushed into the corners of the room, holding the chest. Players then have to navigate to a room pushing blocks which require more than one link to move. The stage also introduces the game's color-coding concept to the player. First, players navigate a large room with color-coded push blocks. The blocks can only be pushed by a link of a matching color. Beyond the color-coded block room, there's a room that really highlights the contrast between the Game Boy Advance style graphics and the Gamecube graphics. There are trap doors which players can fall into, leading to a Game Boy Advance screen. These areas are shockingly bright compared to what's typically seen on the TV screen. It makes sense why. A standard Game Boy Advance has a notoriously dark screen, so the space needs to be bright in order to compensate for that. But the contrast between the moody, deep shadows on the TV and the bright, shadow-free Game Boy Advance sub-area is shocking. Beyond the trapdoors, players come to a fork in the road. There are doors to the north and the east. I first went north. Here I found a ghost, notably marked with blue flames. It is not uncommon for the Zelda series to use a blue flame to indicate ghosts or spirits. For example, the ghost ship in the Wind Waker was notably surrounded by blue flames. This ghost teaches players to pick up and throw other links over gaps. I followed his advice, and I grabbed a bow, but a locked door to the north prevented me from traveling further. So I backtracked and went through the door to the east. That probably was not the best order on how to proceed through this dungeon. The room was really dark. There were some torches providing some light. Those torches also shot fireballs at Link. I slashed blindly through dozens of pots until I stumbled upon a key. Then it was back to the north and through that locked door. Beyond the locked door, we employ a trick first seen in Ocarina of Time, and fire arrows through torches to light other torches. The lighted room reveals dozens of bats flying over a pit of spikes. A crystal switch can also be seen on the far side of the room. That switch creates a bridge. Eliminating the bats results in a massive shower of Force Gems. From there, we move up to a brighter portion of the cave. This is sort of a Lost Woods style section of the game. A Game Boy Advance subscreen features a mage or fortune teller who says, "So, back again, are you? I have a feeling I'll be seeing a lot of you." The music is the fortune teller theme from A Link to the Past. There are 4 exits, 2 cave doors and 2 staircases. I did not see any clues showing how to advance. I found my way through by trial and error. It's a short segment, so the trial and error process isn't bad. The correct path is marked with treasure chests. It takes the players first to the right, then left, then right again, and then to the exit at the back of the cave. A second ghost tells players to act as a team to pull a long lever. We pull this lever to the right to reach the boss, a fight with Shadow Link. He drops bombs. Using the bow, I was able to blow up those bombs and knock him dizzy, which allowed me to get in some hits. After a few hits, he paused and did sort of a color-changing roulette, turning into Red Link. We know from our past color-coding experience that means that only Red Link can damage him. For players who did not catch on to this, there is a ghost in the room who provides a hint about the color coding. Interestingly, this ghost is apparently very recently dead. Shadow Link is the one who killed him. After a few hits, Shadow Link disappears, and the door to the stage exit appears. We destroy the barrier and end the stage. Before we continue on, let's pause for a moment and talk about everyone's favorite 35-year-old fairy, Tingle. When playing in multiplayer mode, each level features a bonus stage, known as Tingle's Tower. Due to timing and scheduling issues, I only completed Hyrule Adventure in the single-player mode. But after I completed the game, I had my wife Mandy sit down with me one night, and we checked out each of the games unlocked in Tingle Tower. Players receive an invite to visit Tingle Tower after the second stage of each level. When accepted, the tower is airlifted into place.
Woo, it's Tingle! Are there 3 Tingles? Because there's 4 links?
Tingle has 3 brothers.
Inside the tower, there are 8 portals laid out in 2 rows of 4. The portals are inactive until the corresponding Tingle Tower in a level is reached. In this first level, the only available portal is on the lower left. There is a sign in front of each portal, which provides the name of the game on the Game Boy Advance screen. And sometimes it provides additional information, such as records. The first game is called Bucking Bronco. It's a horse racing game. As players travel through the portal, they're taken to the minigame stage. In each stage, players have to talk to a non-player character to start the game. Players race on a winding path, which shifts between the TV screen and the Game Boy Advance screen. The switch between the TV and the Game Boy Advance screen typically happens when players enter a cave or a wooded area on the TV screen.
Oh, goodness. There's a lot of switching screens. That's complicated.
I felt there was a surprising amount of time spent on the Game Boy screen during Bucking Bronco. There are even times the screen would transition and I expected to return to the TV, only to find that we were still on the Game Boy screen. The horse moves quicker than Link, and it can jump with the press of a button. There are fences that players can jump over with proper timing, and carrot pickups which can temporarily speed up the player's horse.
Hey, I'm in the lead! Oh, but then I ran into a post. Did I win?
You won.
I won! Oh my goodness, guys, that never happens!
Players are awarded Force Gems for completing the game, and they're given a chance to collect gems which drop from the sky in a free-for-all. Players then advance to the north to find Tingle. They must talk to Tingle to complete the minigame. He hands out a bonus to anyone who beat the record time on the race, and declares a final winner based on the number of Force Gems collected. We will view each Tingle Tower game as they come throughout the season, but after Mandy and I completed all the games, I did ask for her thoughts on this one.
What'd you think of the horse race?
I think that was my least favorite. It didn't move smoothly. Your horse either went down or left or right. It felt very blocky, and the race was short enough that I never got comfortable with the controls.
Yeah, I didn't mind it. There were multiple times, though, where I felt like you would reach the end of a screen, and I assumed I was going to transition back to the TV, but I didn't.
And so you looked up, and you actually were still on your screen.
Yeah.
And you ran into, like, a barrier. Yeah, it felt the least cohesive, I guess. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, like, honestly, if I'd played that one, I might have been like, oh, do I even go on? But then the chickens were really fun to catch. And so, you know, like, I felt like that was probably my least favorite.
Now let's return to the adventure. The final stage of the level is Hyrule Castle. We start outside the gates, where we are greeted by a rendition of the classic overworld theme. We also meet Kaepora Gaebora, the owl. It states a terrible fiend inside the castle is draining all the energy from the maidens. Our first task is getting inside the castle itself. To the left of the castle gates, we lift a large rock and find a side-scrolling area. Interestingly, the music of this area is a rendition of the Dark World dungeon music from A Link to the Past. Through this pathway, we toss Link over a gap to press 2 floor switches to reach the top of the castle wall. We then hit a crystal switch to open the gates of the castle. Inside, we are immediately thrown into combat. A chief soldier and a dozen blue soldiers. Once they're gone, we enter the castle proper. Here, we're treated to a new rendition of the Hyrule Castle theme. The interior of the castle should feel familiar to anyone who's played A Link to the Past. The layout's not the exact same, but the look and the layout are similar enough that the vibe is clearly carried through. The central door which leads to the throne room is locked, forcing players to either go to the left or the right on the second floor. The path forward is to the right. This leads to the upper wall of the castle. To the right there is a tower room. A door is visible on the front. A pair of tiles on the back hint that there's a back door here too. I actually missed that detail at first, and my daughter pointed it out to me. Inside the tower room we find bombs, a bow, and an impassable gap. We can see on the main screen there is a crystal switch outside the front door of the tower, on the other side of the gap. The solution is clever. I wasn't sure if it would work, but I tried all the same. I grabbed a bow and fired an arrow through the front door. It passed straight through, going from the subscreen to the main screen and hit the crystal switch. Cool! This allows us to drop down to the lower level. We use a bomb flower to blow open a cracked wall. Inside we find a side-scrolling area with cannons that we use to reach a treasure chest with the key. Through the locked door we find a mini-boss. Taking out 3 green soldiers causes a pair of double doors to open, revealing a ball and chain soldier. Players have to move quickly to avoid the swinging ball and get close to the soldier to land a hit. He swings the ball faster with each hit he takes. He falls after 5 hits or so. Then, dozens of soldiers pour into the arena. Most are blue and they're taken out quickly. Following that particular combat gauntlet, players will find their way forward is blocked by an energy barrier. There are paths to the left and right. To the left, I used a box formation to hit 4 crystal switches at the same time to access a blocked-off portion of the castle. To the left of the entrance, we place a non-living Armos statue onto a star switch to open a skylight in the castle. Inside the castle, we find a Zora. It says it heard screams from the maidens and rushed in to help, only to be captured and split into 2, causing it to look hideous. To the right, we find a wide lever, which we can pull with a wide formation to open an entrance on the right. Inside, there are multiple items on offer. We want the bomb to open a cracked wall, then to destroy a barrier inside a side-scrolling area to rescue a Zora. This Zora tells us it can merge back into its true form and asks to be taken to the barrier blocking our path. When we reach the barrier, the 2 Zoras merge together and transform into a Great Fairy. This particular Great Fairy resembles the Fairy Queen from the Wind Waker, and her being split like that is sort of a callback to Majora's Mask. She uses her magic powers to rain down destruction on dozens of soldiers to remove the barrier. She also tells us she will let her fairy friends know to help us out on our journey. Through the barrier, we find an apparent dead end. But we find our way forward by slashing aside curtains to reveal doors, one on the right and one on the left. On each side, we will find 2 floor switches that, when pressed, remove a portion of the barrier blocking our path forward. Once the way is cleared, we take out dozens of blue soldiers to open a gate leading to the throne room. We slash the curtains behind the throne to reveal a side-scrolling area with a cannon, which leads us to the boss arena. The boss is Phantom Ganon, matching his appearance from the Wind Waker. The music is a rendition of the boss music from A Link to the Past. We face Phantom Ganon by playing a good old-fashioned match of Dead Man's Volley. What else? I used a wide formation to make sure that I was maximizing the area of my swings to volley the energy balls back from Phantom Ganon. Once he fails to return a volley, Phantom Ganon falls to the ground, allowing us to approach him and get some hits in. After several rounds of volleying, the Phantom fell. A wide staircase then appears. At the bottom of the staircase we find another Vati barrier, this time surrounding a crystal hidden in shadow. After we destroy the barrier, a blue crystal with the Blue Maiden inside is revealed. A new musical theme for the Maidens is introduced. It's a unique melody, but it nonetheless strikes me as being inspired by Princess Zelda's theme. It has a similar tone and similar contours. You'll recall that Zelda's theme was first introduced in A Link to the Past, but that game also played that theme every time a maiden was freed, muddying its connection to the princess. This game is making a point to not dilute Princess Zelda's theme with this unique music, but the music also still has a similar sound and feel to that theme. The Blue Maiden recognizes that Link has drawn the Four Sword, and that Vati is now free. She commends Link for his bravery, but also reminds him that it was Shadow Link who captured the maidens. And who, or what, is this Shadow Link? The crystal shatters and the Blue Maiden is freed. She points the four links to the Eastern Temple. Another maiden will be found there. The Blue Maiden then transforms into a fairy and leads the way to Eastern Hyrule. We will head there next week. If you would like to follow along, then please subscribe. If you've already subscribed, thank you. You're awesome. I'm Paul Riley, and I will see you next week.